These are the parts to a $450 gaming PC. It's going to be really awesome for 1080p, and we're going to show you all the parts that we chose and how we got them, as well as show you step by step how to put it together and get it ready for gaming. And of course, we'll show you how it performs so you can decide if you really want to buy it or not. So for the first part, we got the motherboard and CPU combo that we got off Facebook Marketplace for around 130 bucks. It's a Ryzen 5 5500, if it'll focus right there, and an A520 motherboard. Now, we know it doesn't have Gen 4 support, but it's still a nice budget combo for gaming. It also came with the stock cooler, so we don't have to buy one of those. Now for the SSD, we've got this really nice 1TB from Kingston. It cost us around 60 bucks, as well as 16 gigs of RAM from Lexar running at 3200 megahertz. This Apevia power supply is 650 watts. It was on sale for only $55, so you know we had to pick it up. Our PC case is only a $45 case from Antec. Now it hovers around that $45 to $50 mark all the time on like Amazon and Newegg. But the downside is it only comes with one fan. So we decided to get a pack of 3 just regular old black fans that will, do pretty good for this build, I think. And they were only like $9. So got a nice case for under $60. Now, if you want some RGB, you could probably do something a little bit different, but we're just keeping it simple here. And to give us that nice 1080p gaming experience, we're going with the MSI 1070 Ti. It's going to be great for 1080p gaming. And for $450, I think it'll be pretty solid. So let's show you how to put it together. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is install the CPU. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little lever that's right here, all right? And we're going to kind of pull it to the side, all right? And then we're going to lift it up. All right, so it's kind of in the upright position there. All right, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the CPU, which is our Ryzen 5 5500. The name Ryzen spelt across right there, and there's a tiny little arrow right here. But we want the name Ryzen to be facing to where the name AMD Ryzen and Ryzen right there is kind of lined up with the top of this. And this little QR code looking thing that's on the bottom, close to this arrow, is that towards the bottom of your CPU, away from this little black bar where all these tiny little holes are. We're gonna set that and drop that just right in there. It should go in without any problems. Like, you don't wanna force it at all. And then we're gonna gently lower this thing back down and make sure the bar goes back under the little knob there. Again, gently push this little silver bar back down, all right, and make sure it goes back under that little notch. And now we're good to go for that step. For the next step, you're going to need some thermal paste. If your cooler comes with it already applied, you don't need this, but if you do, it's gonna be $7, all right, for a little tube. You might can find one cheaper, but the cheapest I found $7, and I'll link those down in the description, along with all these other parts. Then you're gonna need the back plate. You're gonna make sure the back plate, it goes up under the motherboard, and there are 4 holes that are lined up here on the motherboard, and we're gonna just make sure that back plate lines up with those 4 holes so that they're kind of sticking out right here on these edges so that we can line our cooler up so that it's like this. Now, the AMD logo is facing, sideways. You can turn that if you want to. I kind of just leave it the way it is, but you're welcome to turn it. And so what we're gonna do is, before we do that, again, we gotta make sure we put thermal paste. So for Ryzen CPUs, I just put a little dab in the middle right there, and then we're gonna gently line our cooler up with those 4 holes that we have right there. With those 4 holes. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna screw in like an X pattern. We're gonna screw in an X pattern. So we're gonna put a little bit on this first screw right here, and then we're gonna go diagonally from it and screw on this other screw. And then we're gonna jump and do the other 2 that we haven't done, all right? What I like to do is just get a few turns on each screw to get it good started, and then I tighten them all the way down, just repeating that X pattern every time. So once you have the cooler on and everything is just snug, you don't have to over tighten it, you're gonna take this little power cord here, and we're gonna plug it up to where it says CPU fan. That's our next step. And so what you can see is there's a little notch right there, like plastic piece that's beside these little metal pins. And so what we want is our notch that's right there to go and face that way, and you just slide it right in. You shouldn't have to force, you gotta put a little bit of force, but not a whole lot of force. And that's kind of what it should look like with the aerial view there. And once you've done that, your CPU cooler is installed. So this motherboard only has 2 RAM slots, and they are right here beside the cooler. So we don't have to really worry about positioning. If you have a motherboard with 4 slots, then you kind of have to skip the first one, put it in the second one, skip the third one, put it in the fourth one, all right, if you're going out this way from the CPU cooler. So all we're gonna do on this is make sure this little slot right here on the RAM is lined up with the little notches that are right here on the RAM sticks. Make sure that you pull these tabs out. Sometimes they have tabs on both sides, sometimes they do not. And we're gonna line those up. Once you got them lined up, you just pop it down in there. You'll hear 2 clicks and you'll be good to go. And we're gonna do the same thing with the other side. Line it up, kind of put it down in there, 2 clicks, and you're good to go. RAM is installed. All right, so most motherboards come with this little tiny screw here for your hard drive, your M.2 SATA drive that we're gonna kind of install right here. All right, and the NVMe drive is gonna go right there, and the little screw is gonna go there, okay? And what we're gonna kind of do is line up the notches with this thing, and we're gonna kind of go in at a 45-degree angle here, and it's just gonna slide right in. We're gonna lower it down, we're gonna be there. All right, now, if yours does not come with this little tiny screw, you can order them on Amazon. I'll link some down in the description, but it just slides right in. Push it down with one finger, and you screw the little tiny screw in with your other one. Magnetic screwdrivers are awesome for this kind of thing. All right, so again, can't really do it with one hand, so you just have to look from the aerial view. We're gonna push the SSD down, and we're gonna tighten it in with this little tiny screw there. Now we got a nice M.2 SSD, our RAM. Everything's good now for us to put the motherboard inside the case. All right, so we have a micro ATX motherboard and a micro ATX case. So if you use that combo, you should not have to worry about having any of these little standoffs out of place here. Most of the time, those are gonna be lined up, but in case they're not, you got little holes here that are on the motherboard, and they have to line up with these little or black or silver tabs. All right, so your motherboard has to line up with those tabs in order for you to do what you're supposed to do. All right, so those tabs have to line up with those holes right there on the motherboard. That's what we're trying to do right there. So you want to make sure all of those line up, and before you start screwing anything down, you are going to want to put an IO shield right there. It's a little silver plated piece. It goes right there into that little crevice. So all you're gonna do is make sure like the little holes line up with the places on the motherboard. So you see how those little 3 blue, green, and red circles are towards the bottom away from the cooler? We're gonna put those 3 circles towards the bottom, facing the bottom of the case. All right, and it's gonna go in. It's gonna go in right there on the side of the case. We're just gonna pop it in just like that right there. All right, it just snaps into place. Okay, so before we put our motherboard in the case, we're gonna go ahead and install our fans. All right, so our fans go right there on our case. They go on this inside wall. So in order to do that, you've got to pop this side panel off. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just, take our fingers, all right, and we're just gonna pop this little, if you have fingernails, it probably works a little better. Some of these pop off a little easier than others. I wanna be careful not to break it. All right, so like I have this little plastic tool here that I use. I don't know if this will focus, but that helps me kind of separate these little things out from time to time so that I don't have to use my fingernails, because I don't have fingernails most of the time. All right, so the only bad thing about these cheap fans is that there is only one power connector and there's no way to like daisy chain them together, really. So you are going to need like an adapter so that you can put multiple fans together. The other problem that we have is that you can't really put more than like 3 fans on one header. So we're not going to use all 3 of these fans. We're actually going to only use 2 of them up front and 1 of them in the back of the case. So we're going to put a fan here and here, kind of in that general area, to pull air in. Because this is a budget build, it will be perfectly fine. The way you avoid all of that is you buy a case with all the fans already installed. But I've had this case lying around for a while and I needed to get rid of it. I will link some cases with fans already installed that are around the same price. I would probably go with those. The build process will be the same. You just want to do all this stuff with the fans, And when you buy fans, they come with the screws you need. All right, just use those screws to put them in. Again, we got that thing off the front there. Gonna open this panel, kind of get it out of my way. And what we want is we want the fan to go like this, all right? So that this part is pushing air into the case from the front and blowing it out the back. That's what we want, all right? So these little sides here, we're gonna put that like that. And then what we would like to do is I like to undo these fan cables. Right, so we're gonna put this cable and we're gonna run it so that it's at the back of the PC. All right, so we're gonna take the back panel off so that we can see back there. Another pro tip is if the screws that put your front panel and or your back panel on, if they don't like stay attached, put them back in the holes so that you don't lose them. Lost a lot of screws like that. All right, so we don't need that right now. So what we like to do is right here through the front of the case, we're gonna put this little power cord back there. So the power cord will end up being in the back with all these other wires for us to mess with later. So we run that back there, and then we're gonna you can just take the glass panel off. That makes it much easier. Sometimes those swinging doors are easy to get off and sometimes they're not, so just depends. And then from here you just want to line up the screws. Normally I like to get a couple of them started so that the fan will just kind of dangle there for me. Gonna do the same thing with the other fan, is get it kind of started. Undo this little bread tie looking thing here. Snake that cord to the back there. And then I'm going to put this one kind of up flush to it. Again, I'm going to kind of keep them both in the middle here to give us the most, give us some decent airflow to the case. Okay, so once you get that done, it should kind of look like this. We got the screws in all 4 holes there of the fans, and the fans should be on the front like this. Gonna again take air in and out the case, so it should be good. Now we can put our motherboard in, and of course snap this thing back on. That would help. All right, now for the motherboard. All right, so once we have the I/O shield and the standoffs lined up, we're just going to gently set our motherboard inside here, making sure that it lines up with the I/O shield on the side. So again, when you set the motherboard in, you want to make sure all of those are lined up there on the side. And once you do that, you can start to screw in the motherboard. So motherboard screws, all right, look like this. They are fine threaded screws. They've got this little outer rim around them. They should come with your PC case, and you should have enough for the build. And they go in all of those little holes that look like this. Okay, so you want to make sure all of those are lined up just right, so you can just see like the gold or the black or whatever those little standoff colors are in your case that are lined up perfect, just like that right there. And then it's ready to put a screw in. You'll probably have to hold the cooler with one hand and the screwdriver with the other, so you'll be looking at the top down view for this process. All right, and so what we will do is we will start to screw these in one at a time. And what I like to typically do is start in the corner somewhere so that we can get this kind of lined up. And then once we get the corners going, then we can kind of do the other ones. And you just repeat that process until all of the screws are in place. All right, once that's done, let's go do the power supply. All right, so this PC case is semi-modular, all right? So it means we don't have all the cords in this little thing here, but we've got the most important ones that are here. Regardless of which power supply that you get, we're gonna have the 24-pin CPU cable that looks split up into 2 4-pin connectors, which is important for this motherboard, and a PCIe connector here. So that's the only 3 that we need for this build, so we don't have to plug up anything else. So to install the power supply, we're gonna make sure we put the fan facing downward, and the power little switch here button is going to be facing the outside of the case like so. All right, and either your power supply or your case will come with the screws that you need to install this power supply. So it's going to be a screw that kind of looks like this from the side here. Kind of get it to focus here, but all right, they kind of look like that. And those are the ones we're going to do to screw in the power supply. All right, so again, fan facing downward. All right, we're just going to kind of line the holes up there, and we're going to screw that into place. Again, on these, it doesn't really matter like what order you screw them in. I just like to kind of do the diagonals first, just so that it's a little easier to keep it like steady. And then after we get all that done, we just got to plug up all the cords and we're going to be good to go. All right, so there's several cords that we got to plug up, so let's just go over all of them. They're kind of like on the back of your case. All right, so the first cord, in no particular order, we've got USB and audio. Those cords are kind of important, and you can kind of like pull these apart if you need to get like some more slack. This is your USB 3.0 header. All of these cords will go on your motherboard, and these are the connectors that you need to plug it up and give power to the PC, and we will talk about those in more detail here in a minute. All right, these 3 connectors here in the back are the connectors that we will use to power the fans, and we already went over cord connectors that we need. All right, so what I like to do here is kind of just put the connectors through the side. So the 3.0, the USB 3.0, that one typically goes on the side here. I'll try to organize it so that the cords won't get too tangled. All right. Okay, your USB connectors and the audio connector, you want to kind of put those wherever will fit right up under on the right side of the case. And then you want to put the power cords kind of somewhere on the right side that go up under like that. Okay? Then you're going to feed your 24 pin. All right? 24 pin. You can kind of put it somewhere in the middle, topish area of the case. You want to feed it to the front. Okay? Your CPU cable. That's not it. Here, your CPU cable, these little 4-pin power connector here. All right, we want to put it through the top right here. And for this build, we only need one of them. So we're going to put that through right there. Okay. Through the top there. And hopefully it will stay. And then last but not least is our graphics card cable, our PCIe. And that again is going to go on the bottom right along with these power cords here. All right. Once you got all that kind of going towards the front, then we'll go to the front of the case to plug it all up. All right. So first up is the audio, and the audio cord goes in the bottom right here. It'll only go one way, so don't force it. Just make sure everything is lined up nice and smooth and plug it in. All right, then USB, you can see at the bottom here on the motherboard, if it'll focus, there are some USB headers. Doesn't really matter which one you plug it into. I'm just going to plug it into the first one here. Again, it will only go one way. So if you try it one way and it doesn't work, flip it. So if you try it one way and it doesn't work, flip it upside down. Typically though, the letters are on the top. All right, after I plug the cords in, I kind of tuck them back towards the case so that we can cable manage a little better in the back. And we want to keep this part of the case as clean as possible. All right, so we got those plugged up, so we're good on that. All right, so the next thing is our power cables here. Okay, power switch, reset, power LED, and HDD. All right, and that's going to go in the bottom right-hand corner there. Okay, and they're kind of going to go stacked on top of each other. Okay, we got power switch that goes there, power LED plus or minus on the top. Those are your top 4 buttons, your top 4 little pins, and the bottom pins, all right, are HDD and reset. HDD goes on the bottom left 2, and the next 2 are the reset switch. All right, so if you can see, I try to do the bottom 4 first. And so I got HDD and reset on the bottom there, and then we'll put power switch above those. And power LED plus minus and power switch, they go on top of them like that. Okay, so the HDD and stuff's underneath it, and the power switch, power plus minus, they go underneath or on top of the other 4 like that. And so you've got those power cords connected. All right, and then next we're going to take our 24 pin and we're going to match up the little clip there with the little clip here, and we're going to make sure that all of this lines up nicely, and we're just going to plug it in. All right, so you will hear a nice little click there on that little place right there for the 24 pin. You'll hear a little click, or barely, you'll feel it kind of catch a little bit. All right, and we got the 24 plugged in. All right, and then the 4 pin, all right, then our 4 pin power connector goes up here on the right. And you'll plug it in like so. All right, and it should only go one way. It will only go one way as well, and that will be plugged in there. All right, so we got all of that plugged in. Now we just got to connect the fans and plug in the GPU. Okay, so since our fans can't be daisy chained, we have to kind of do it manually, and my camera phone is what looks the best here, so that's what we're going to do. You've seen it throughout this video, but this is actually the camera microphone as well. But these we need a little fan adapter here that will work like this, and we will plug all of this up so that we can see it. Okay, so there are 3 little connectors like this that the fan headers go into. So each fan has a cord, and you'll plug it into these 3 things. And this fan cord here will go into one of the fan places on the motherboard. All right, ours is not in the best spot, so we're gonna actually run this cord up here through the top. Okay, and our only fan header is right here above the SSD, which I really wish companies would quit doing that. I really do. All right, and we're gonna plug it up the same way we did the CPU fan by making sure that it's turned the correct way. And it should be plugged up just like that right there. And we're gonna kind of pull all the cords as tight as we can right there. It's not gonna look the most fantastic, but that's what you get with cheaper PC parts, unfortunately. There's not a whole lot we can do with that. We will try to like pull it to the side more when we cable manage a little bit to try to hide them. All right, so I know we said we put the 3.0 here on the side, but we're actually going to put it at the bottom. So it's got to go back through the case like so. And we've got to put it in the bottom, and it goes in that port right there. There's a notch at the top of these that goes in the top of that, and we just plug it right in. All right, and then when it's plugged in, it'll be nice and snug. Again, tucking that cord there on the back. Now, if you do need 2 power cords for your GPU, like we do here, because our GPU needs 2 of these power cables, then you are going to have to plug in one of these extra cords, another PCIe. That's what you're looking for. Only one end of it, though, will go into the power supply. Has a skinnier little tab right there. All right, and it'll only one of them will go in, so don't force it. If it doesn't line up, it's probably the other side, but it should be the side that just has one cord by itself. The other side kind of has that double cord there. All right, and then we just line it up in those holes and plug it in. All right, and then you will run it the same way you ran the other one up under the motherboard there, and we're good to go. All right, now to plug up the graphics card, it's gonna go in this slot. It's the only slot it can be. You wanna make sure that that tab is pushed down there, all right? And you wanna kinda line the graphics card up. Oh my God, this does not fit. Okay, so this graphics card will fit in this case, but it's a very tight squeeze. So I really can't do it with both hands. So you're gonna have to kind of put it in at an angle. I suggest maybe, I'll leave some better cases down in the description, but you're gonna kind of have to angle it like this to get it in there. It'll fit and it'll work and it won't mess anything up, but you have to be very, very, very careful. But you wanna make sure that you line it up with this and you push that tab out, and then there is this little doohickey here that we have to take out like so. All right, and then you want to kind of line it up to see which of these tabs that you're going to pull out. It should be the middle 2. I accidentally poked the top one out already, but they do have these little fillers here that come with the case that you can fill those back in with if you do mess up and do the wrong one. All right, so we're going to just line this up, the graphics card. We're going to line this part of the graphics card up, the PCIe lane, with this PCIe lane. We're just gonna snap it in. All right, I'm gonna do that, and then I'll show you how to install the screws over here on this side. All right, so like I said, it fits, but it is extremely tight. Okay, it has just enough air to get up under it. All right, so we should be okay there. Now we're gonna plug these cords up. Okay, one of them needs to kind of go together like this and be plugged in there. One of them, you're only gonna use 3, and you're gonna plug it in there. It'll only go one way. The tab's got to go one way. All right, and then we're going to plug those up. Okay, so before we plug up the power cords over here, we want to like make this GPU a little bit more stable. So we're actually going to screw it in on this side. So we want to make sure that this is up nice and high where it's supposed to be, and line up those holes right there. And we're going to use the same screws that we used for the power supply, and we're going to screw in the graphics card right there. All right, so once you get those screws in right there, we're ready to plug up the power cords. All right, so we've got one that is like an 8-pin that we need to put together right there. Okay, all right, so once you have the screws put in here on the side, you can put this thing back on and put the screw there. And then it's time to plug up the power cords. All right, so one of your power cords is going to use an 8-pin connector where you kind of put these two together like so. Get that little tab lined up right there. All right, and then you will plug that in there. And then this one, you don't need that. You just need the 6-pin, and that will go plugged in right there. All right, and those cords will only go in one way where these tabs have to line up correctly. And, you know, should be good to go here. So now all that's left is to plug it up to a monitor and see if it actually works. All right, so we went ahead and put the side panel back on. Could be bad luck though, of course. And we're gonna see the moment of truth if this turns out. Well, I didn't plug it up. Dadgummit. All right, let's do this again. All right, power switch on. We've got our trusty Arzopa monitor here. All right, I'm gonna plug that up there, plug in the USB, and the moment of truth. Woo! Something's catching on the bottom. That's why I told you it was bad luck to put the glass panel on first. All right, let's see what we can do. Okay, so the way I had the GPU cords run through that little bitty hole right there, I had to run them up through this bigger hole on the side so that they wouldn't hit the fans because there's not a ton of clearance there. There's enough for air, but that's about it. All right, so now shut the glass and we try it again. Everything's back on. Oh, hold on, flip the power switch. Now everything's, all right, there we go. All right, we got life. We've got a monitor flash. See if we post, baby. Good old posty post. Come on. My light is making it incredibly difficult to see. Post, 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 post. You know why it's not posting? There's no HDMI plug up. All right, we got the HDMI plugged up. Unfortunately, a lot of times, if you don't have the HDMI plugged up when you power it on, it's not gonna show you anything. So you gotta flip it off. Just wait a second or two, flip it back on, and try again. All right, let's see if we post this time. Come on, baby, post. Come on, baby, post. Post. Oh, that's a good sign. Let's go. All right. Oh, it's already got the RAM speed set. That's cool, but we'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So we got Ryzen 5 5500, 16 gigabytes of memory. Everything looks good. All right. Now we just got to show you how to install Windows. All right. So once you get your gaming PC built, there's a few things you got to do before you play. Install Windows, enable your RAM speeds, and install the drivers. So let's do that. So to install Windows, you're going to need at least an 8 gigabyte flash drive, and we're going to plug it up to our computer. You will also need a computer that can actually run Windows. Maybe it's a laptop, a school laptop. Go to the public library if they'll let you download stuff there. But you need something that already has Windows. Then we're going to pull up our files and we're going to go to the flash drive that we just put in there. Mine's named Sam Data there. What we're going to do is rename this as Windows so that I know what it is and don't accidentally delete something later on. All right, then we're going to right click and we're going to format. Okay, I've FAT32 NTFS. I've used both of those with no issues. Some people argue over that on the internet, but I don't think it's a big deal. So we're going to click start. And it's going to erase everything. So if you don't want anything erased, use a different flash drive. Once that's done, we want to go to a web browser and find Windows Installation Media. Just click it, type it in the search bar. It'll be one of the first thing that pops up. And you're going to look for Create an Installation Media for Windows. It's going to be on Microsoft.com, and you can choose Windows 10 or Windows 11. Personally, I like to use Windows 10 and then upgrade to Windows 11 for free if your hardware allows it. What we're going to do is we're going to click Download Now, Save As, and just put it, somewhere. Downloads is fine. And then we're going to open the media creation tool. And it's going to take a little while to set up this whole process. So, go make you a snack, a sandwich, chill, watch one of my other YouTube videos. That would be a great idea. All right, and then in a few minutes, it'll be done with this process, and we'll get to create an installation USB flash drive. That's what we want to do. We're going to click next, next, USB flash drive. All right, and then this is why we named our drive, because we don't want to accidentally delete something, We want to make sure that we click the one that we labeled window, click next, and this is the process that takes the longest. So process is going to take a little while. So after you let it run to 100, it'll say your USB flash drive is ready, and you'll just click finish. Okay, so once you have the flash drive that we just talked about ready to go, all you got to do is just plug it into the back of your motherboard in one of the USB slots and boot your computer up, and it should go straight to the Windows activation screen or the Windows launch screen. All right, so let's see if that indeed happens. So we already know that there we go. That way we can see the screen a little better. We already know that it posts because we've already done that. So if we set our flash drive up correctly, it should just boot straight to Windows. And there you go. There's the Windows screen. So you just follow the on-screen prompts there, and I will show you what those look like. Again, I know there's a bit of a glare, all right, but you're going to click Next, Install Now, all right, and then here you want to click, I do not have a product key. You can get one of those from SCD Key or somewhere like that for like 16 bucks or so, all right, or you can just deal with the little markings that'll be in the bottom right-hand corner. Windows 10 Pro is the one that I always use. Then you click Next. All right, accept the terms and the license. And what we want to do is a custom install. And your drive should pop up right there if you installed it correctly. We just click Next and let it do its thing. Once this is done installing, I'll show you how to enable your RAM speeds and put your drivers on there so that you can be ready to play games. All right, so now that we're inside the computer here, the first thing we're gonna do is download the drivers. So since we have a GTX 1070 Ti, we're gonna use the NVIDIA drivers. So we're gonna do the NVIDIA app. So we're going to download the NVIDIA app for gamers and creators. It is the beta app, but we're still going to use it because it's doing some pretty good things right now. Once it's done, you want to open up the file. All right, if it for some reason does get blocked, we're just going to keep it so that it'll work here. All right, so we're going to open up the file. We're going to click yes so that it will run. Then you can close out Edge. I'm going to let it run, agree and continue. Let it do its thing. All right, look there, the app automatically opened and is downloading the latest driver for us to use. So once it's downloaded, we're gonna click install. Then typically I just do Express because I don't have any other drivers on there. Continue, and then we just let it run until it's complete. During the installation process, it may flicker your screen a few times. Don't freak out, just let it work and do its thing so that it can be updated correctly. After everything's done installing, all we gotta do is click the Restart Now button for all the changes to take effect. So once we have Windows installed and everything's booted up properly, we wanna enable our RAM speeds, all right? So like if we go to our task manager right now and we look at our RAM is already running at 3200 megahertz. All right, so if we look at our RAM right now, it's running at 3200 megahertz, which is what we want. However, yours may not be doing that. So let me show you what to do here. First, you want to restart your PC. And while it's restarting, on your keyboard, you're going to spam the delete button on your keyboard. You're going to spam it. All right, and then you're going to come to the BIOS. All right, this is the BIOS that we're in. This is the first screen you see before you install Windows. All right, but you want to do this after Windows. And right here you have two XMP profiles, Profile 1 and Profile 2. Typically, Profile 1 is always the one that works the best. So you want to click Profile 1 and then restart your computer and save it, and you should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and click Profile 1 for mine, but it's not really going to change anything. All right. Then you click F10, that saves it, and you reboot, or you can just click Save and Exit. This is really the only thing I would change in the BIOS, and it will give you some nice performance boosts when we start testing games in a little bit. All right, and then when you go back to your task manager and you click on Performance and you look at your memory, it should say whatever speeds you paid for. So we have 3200 megahertz, that's what we're getting. So now we just gotta put some games on it and go test it out. We tested all the games here at 1080p, starting with some pretty strenuous games like Horizon Forbidden West. It was just released on PC not too long ago, and we tried like the low preset settings, and we got a pretty solid 60 FPS. It did have some dips around the 50 to 55 mark occasionally, but it was playable for like a story-based game. It did pretty good in Warzone as well. In the Resurgence game mode with no FSR or any upscaling, we got around like 75 to 80 FPS. Then we used FSR because it is an older NVIDIA card, and we got somewhere around like 100 to 120 FPS. That's pretty solid in my opinion, even though it was with upscaling, but I'm not like a super competitive gamer, so it doesn't bother me. But where this PC really shines is in the easier to run games. Like Apex Legends on all low settings, we got over 140 FPS. Very smooth and playable, especially for $450. It really shines in a game like Valorant, high settings, 240-ish FPS. You might have a drop every now and then when there's a bunch of abilities going on, but it's really, really nice for Valorant. And of course, we got to try everybody's favorite Battle Royale, good old Fortnite, on performance mode, view distance far, everything else pretty much low or turned off, and we got over 200 FPS. It sat around 240 sometimes, but I wouldn't call it 240 because it did drop occasionally. But you're going to have fun playing it, and it's going to be more smooth than, you know, a console or something like that. So let me know what you think about this overall process. I know it's a long video. If you watched over 5 minutes of this, or you made it this far in the video, let me know down in the comments. But if you want a little bit more expensive build, you can go watch this video.